management. Item 56 on our supplementary agenda.
Yep, they're all.
Keith, Stopbank, you're on. So the recommendations on this one around approval for a fast track sandbank replacement construction works and progressing temporary Stopbank's management option 1. So do you want to introduce it, Phil, and you're moving it? And
I'm moving it, yeah.
And Pauline will second it, right. So over to you.
And in fact, it has come to the ITI committee. We supported the staff recommendations. I think it's around the stop banks will give more certainty for how temporary stop banks, they still will be, as to how we manage any flooding, and especially with the impact of the tide in the lower reaches. And all this has been part of the land drainage recovery program, and we're working to push forward this year. But the staff will explain the specifics of the project much more clearly than I would, because there is some complexity to it.
Yep. Paul?
Just want to get some clarity around the option of doing minimum, which is $1 million.
Oh, the staff was just going to do a report.
That's a question I can ask.
Yeah. Did you want us to give just a little
Yeah.
bit of our way of briefing?
That would be great.
Okay, I'll perhaps just a little bit of an introduction, and I can maybe fill in some other details. The Avon temporary stop banks that have deteriorated, the sandbag sections have not lasted, so there is a need to carry out a certain amount of minimum level repairs. Because of the nature of the residential red zone and the delays in decisions over future art, we're not able to go forward with permanent stop banks, so there's a need to carry out works. The proposals include allow for improving the stop bank design life up to 20 years, still temporary in nature, not permanent, but it does allow time for decisions to be taken on that. Whilst looking at those repairs, there's an opportunity to see with option 1 to provide some level of enhancement to improve levels of service by raising the stop banks slightly. So there's additional cost to that, but we feel that it is important that we review and consider the levels of service in the area, and we have a proposal for option 1 with some improvements. Do you want to add to that?
I think it's worthwhile just emphasising these were originally built under emergency to stop tidal inundation, and they were originally planned to be built to 10.8 metres and raised slightly higher as the design went on. They were always intended to be interim, and so this process was just carrying out a rigorous risk analysis to assess their stability under a range of loadings, high tides and so on, to test just how well they might stand up over time. They were found to be in generally good condition and stable, just those sandbag sections that were needing to be replaced with urgency, hence the first part of our recommendation. But then also an opportunity, as Keith said, to increase the level of service through the middle sections, and we'll also look at strengthening other sections as needed. And the philosophy, I guess, is to just maximise the use of these interim stop banks whilst we're waiting for the longer term solution.
And I think you probably need to add to that you've taken a multi-hazard approach rather than just the one.
Well, the stop banks are not built to withstand an earthquake, and I think we have to be very open about that. That the cost of strengthening the earthquakes would be significant. Having said that, we went through the February 14th earthquake and they withstood that very well. And every time there is an earthquake, we get ground accelerations, and then if there is a certain level, we go out and do an inspection. So there is a multi-hazard in terms of tidal inundation and flooding, but not sea level rise as well. And that's one thing to point out, is not to account any sea level rise, and that's due to the high horizon we're looking at.
Sorry. David and Glenn.
Thank you. I appreciate this paper refers to the temporary stop banks from Bridge Street up, and I have a couple of angles I want to approach here. One concerning the stop banks that are up street of Bridge Street, and in particular how we propose to deal with temporary stop banks that may be leaking at this stage. I am aware of some work that's already temporary work that's been carried out around Owls Terrace, and recent high tides have seen a reasonable amount of water still leaking through the stop bank. Is it your intention to take any corrective measures to stop leakage of these temporary stop banks?
There will be some seepage through the stop banks. That's generally relatively low. I think the surface ponding that's noticed during high tides or the rainfall events has a number of mechanisms which could be caused. One could be that there's flap gates on the ends of pipes which are leaking through the sumps, and so circumventing the stop banks that way. So what we will do is when works have been carried out on a section of the stop banks, we'll make sure that the infrastructure beneath those is checked as well and corrected. And part of the detailed design, we'll also be requesting that looking at the local drainage and the flap gates as well. So seepage through stop banks is quite low, but there will be some, but I do not think that it's the cause of the most of the ponding that's been seen. So there's a number of other mechanisms that are occurring.
So there is one or two areas we're specifically looking at the moment where we don't think it's in excess of what you see from seepage, so we're getting those flap gates checked. And the City Care should be going out and checking some tomorrow.
Good. And secondly, the flow-on effect, if you pardon the pun, it's probably a good question. More for the Chief Executive, I suppose, is in recent weeks we've had issues below Bridge Street which aren't covered in this report, and I'll probably raise a can of worms if I start bringing it up, but it is apart from this. Are these issues going to come before Council at some stage?
There's some work being done on that, yes.
So it's probably not appropriate that I raise it now, but I just wanted to ensure that those downstream flow-on effects, we can discuss them at some stage in the near future.
Yeah, I think that because there was there's been a report done for councillors, which you will have seen, yes. Which we're sending to the community groups that have raised these issues. But the area that you're talking about is where there's I'm going to try and get this right, the confluence of the tidal and where the stop banks are effective against the river, yeah, that way, but not the tidal coming up that way.
No, so there are a number of things that I'd quite like to address in that area, but there will be a separate session on that coming forward to Council.
Well, yes, there will be, because you will have seen from the report that there's quite a lot of work yet to be done in that area. Yeah, so there will be, but it's a bigger issue because it's not about stop banks.
No.
But there's work to be done.
There is work to be done.
Yes.
Yeah, fine, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, just want to back David up on that, actually. Obviously a crucial issue for the ward. Just got a few questions here. Will these temporary stop banks prevent the kind of hydrostatic pressure, so that, if that's the right term, the water coming up from beneath the ground, or is that just something residents will have to live with on the roads that surround
The stop banks are not, these ones do not have any groundwater cut-off mechanism in them, so yes, groundwater can come through with the differential between the tide and the ground levels. Okay. There is potential for that to increase groundwater levels on the other side.
Sure. And just to I hope this can be acted on fairly quickly. Just Halsey Street with the South New Brighton campground is below the schematic. I know you're not necessarily saying that that's where the stop banks will go, but just in the report, Halsey Street's a few blocks below that dotted line. So one of the residents of the campground, South New Brighton, yes, it is a plea that the sandbags have solidified, not offer up protection. Could we please have something there?
Yes, I think that's a coastal erosion issue there. Those bags are protecting for coastal erosion, as far as I understand.
Right, so...
As opposed to tidal inundation.
Okay. So that's another time frame altogether.
And yes, and this project's looking at this inundation, and it's not looking at all the erosion issues, apart from for protection of the stop banks.
Which is in part of the issue that I want to address with that whole south of Bridge Street, which is outside of what you are bringing to us today, but there is a substantial issue that needs to be addressed and debated, and there are a number of questions that I'd like to raise which are outside this report, but I'm signalling that there is a strong desire to have that forum in front of this body.
Mentioned a very complex issue, and there won't be...
Yeah, but I can't ask the questions in front of this forum unless I have a paper that addresses it. This paper does not address specifically anything downstream of Bridge Street.
Yeah, no, that's not. It doesn't. It doesn't.
No.
And the trouble was that the properties that are affected in terms of the issue that you're raising aren't all downstream of Bridge Street.
No.
But their protection or their vulnerability comes from the south of Bridge Street.
Yes.
Yeah.
So again, I'm just signalling
The confluence of the tidal versus the river. Yeah. So I think that one of the things that we probably need to do is to get that item onto this agenda, and I don't know that Richard's still in the room, he's not, but I think that a report from the District Plan Review Committee to the Council would bring that issue to the agenda. That might be the way to do it,
yes,
because
certainly can't come on this agenda.
No, it can't come on this agenda right now because it's not relevant to the paper. But it is an important issue, and every council is aware of it. So and it's there's been significant public interest in the issue as well. So it seems to me that because one of the downsides of the removal of the coastal hazards chapter from the District Plan Review is that there is a distinct difference between the land on the coast and land on the estuary, and perhaps we should have allowed the estuary side to continue. So we have asked the District Plan Review support staff to analyse that request and to come back to us. There's no reason why that report can't come to Council. So that would actually bring it to the Council table.
I think it's just my third one.
Yep.
It's a good segue though. Just in 6.17, where it says in this section the tidal influence decreases. Obviously you're the ones with the knowledge on that, but I sort of just the point, it's still very very strong tidal influence in that middle section.
So there's still strong tidal influence, but the river flooding becomes the dominant influence in terms of determining the peak water levels.
Okay.
So you'll notice tide when there's not a flood. In the flood, then the flood trumps the tide and rises peak water levels.
Runs pretty high even without.
So we do model the peak flood events with a high tide as well.
Yep.
So a 200-year flood event is run with a 20-year peak tide. It's quite extreme.
Yanni?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to check, you haven't proposed anything around the Avon Loop area, although that was an area that does get when we had the last bad flooding. I mean, the river's the land's very low. Can I just ask why not?
So that area is an area that we've classified as being in the upper section, and that's where the flood level starts to increase quite significantly above the original design level of 11.2. And then looking at those properties which are affected in that area, and this will be part of the review as well. So far we've only been able to determine that there's unoccupied red zone properties that are affected by flooding in these extreme events. Day to day, of course, there's a river stays within the soil, but it's looking at whether there's a need to provide protection, which is just for occupied red zone properties, and also stop at a artificial point. If we were to raise the stop banks in the upper section, they've noticed that there's a stop off point. This then goes more to the question of the long term. What is, if there is going to be an engineered flood solution, what will that look? How far will it extend? So that's the rationale there.
Right. So, in terms of the numbers of people that are affected in the downstream, the middle, and the upper, how many people is this protection for? Or how many dwellings?
There's quite a significant amount of dwellings in the middle and the downstream that are occupied green zone properties, and those being our focus for protecting. And then in the upper section, there are no green zone properties at risk of flooding. That will be, of course, reviewed again through the detailed design just to make sure we've got that completely right.
Okay. And in regards to Avon Park, so it constantly gets a lake. Is this going to address the lake in Avonside Drive?
That is this. Yeah, that falls within the middle section, which is going to have these stop banks raised.
So you're going to raise the stop banks? Is it?
And as in part of that, looking at
coming underneath.
Well, we're looking at the local drainage issues there as well.
Yeah.
As I said before, the planning that's noticed in the road there could be a number of mechanisms. So determining what is actually causing that.
Right. So, but it will be addressed.
Yes.
And just the final question I had was just in regards to understanding, like, $4 million, quite a lot of money in regards to a response. I don't know if you've seen the letter that we've had from Hugo.
Yes.
So I don't know if there's any response to that. I mean, there's some comment in there about reinterpreting or redefining stop banks and dams, but also it's just, I guess, the $4 million that's spending, it's just for temporary measures. How future-proofed are these temporary solutions, and what's the kind of time frame for getting the permit?
So these temporary stop banks are expected to have an interim design life of 20 years. How long it will take to get decisions on the red zone and to move forward with permanent stop banking is very difficult to say.
No.
Right, but I mean, just in terms of things like, previously we spent a lot of money on a temporary library, and then, a few months later we have to go on.
Look, Yanni, I really do think that that's a little bit...
Sandbanks in libraries, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I know.
No, do we have any sense? I mean, obviously we talked to the Crown, someone's talking to them about the future of the red zone. We've got, people that are communicating. Are we talking basically years before we get some sort of physical works in this area?
We don't know. We can't answer that.
It's difficult to answer, but my personal view, from what I understand, the sense is that it could be years before those decisions of the permanent stop banks can be agreed. Okay.
There's a significant amount of work yet to be done in terms of, there are roads that we have to determine the future of some roads. Where there is a whole lot of work to be done, but it's being done in a collaborative way between the Crown and the Council, and that was made pretty clear in the letter of expectations which we signed off to Regenerate Christchurch in terms of looking to those infrastructure needs for the city. It's got to be very much a part of the regeneration of the city. So, but in terms of the correspondence that you referred to, I'm quite clear before, because that was what I was referring to, that we are going to send them a copy of the memorandum that every councillor has had this week, and it's just to make sure that we're completely on the same page. We all need to get these things resolved, but as we all know, we're talking about sea level rise, which is what the coastal inundation issue is about. when we're talking about sea level rise, we're talking about prediction modelling 50 to 100 years out. So, there isn't, there is no impending sense of urgency, but it is something that we need to resolve. And in the meantime, we do need to have these temporary stop banks, the management option that has been selected by the committee, by staff, supported by the committee. I think we do need to get that underway as quickly as we possibly can. Paul?
Just go back to the question so to get answered around the $1 million option. That I know that there's the views are is to get the slightly higher level of service, but the $1 million option is slightly lower level of service. What sort of lifespan would that option provide?
In the same lifespan, it's just around the probability of it being overlooked. Because they're lower, there's a high probability that in the next 20 years, up to 20 years, they might be overtopped. So that's the main driver for looking at increasing.
Likely to be there for 20 years.
But again, that decision's...
Well, this is back to the point. We don't know how long it's going to take. It's going to be a number of years, but it's difficult to know how many. We very much hope it's not going to be 20 years. But from a cost-effective point of view, this is a time frame that we can provide a temporary interest stop banks up to that life. In the worst case, should it take that long?
And I'd expect the option 3, the do minimum, is just to replace the sandbag sections. Now, if we were to leave the other sections, there'll be, I think, a drip feeding of works needing to be done to kind of keep the various sections will need to be worked on as time progresses. So rather than spending the $4 million at this point to get them generally to a state where the maintenance is this, I think the do minimum option would require funds to be applied more regularly to keep them up to the right.
I've no idea what that may be, just a ballpark.
No, because it's very much dependent on earthquake events, it's dependent on flood events, it's dependent on just in general how well they maintain other things. Some of the damage to the stop banks has been through sandbag being removed from white baiters, so things that you're not able to control.
Right. So I will put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Say no. That's carried. Thank you. And the next item is the resolution to assist the public